Hello and welcome to Canvas, the Niger-Delta Roundtable, where I discuss the future of this region blessed with the hydrocarbon resources. Every week, we give time to reflecting on topics relevant to the development of the Niger-Delta and her people. Now, this episode is no different. We're here to focus once again on how to take the region to a more promising future. The program is sponsored by the operator of the NNPC, SPDC, Total Energies, Ajib Joint Venture, the Shell Petroleum Development Company of Nigeria Limited, headquartered in Port Harcourt. Thank you for joining. I'm Adedayo Ilushakin. A topic on this episode is mental health and securing the bag. World Mental Health Day takes place every year, October 10, to spotlight mental health around the world, raise awareness of mental health issues, and encourage efforts to support those experiencing mental health issues. The World Federation for Mental Health announced the theme for World Mental Health Day 2024 as Mental Health at Work. In today's fast-paced world, the pressure to secure the bag can often overshadow our mental well-being. But what if we told you that taking care of your mind is just as crucial as building your bank account? Join us as we explore how mental health impacts our financial decisions, the importance of self-care in achieving our goals, and practical tips to balance both. Now, whether you're hustling in your career, managing a side gig, or simply navigating life's challenges, we've got insights and stories that will inspire you to thrive both mentally and financially. So, stay with us, get ready to transform your mindset, because securing the bag starts with a healthy mind. Again, today's topic is on Canvas, is mental health and securing the bag. And my guest is Dr. Nsikak Abasi Intia. Dr. Intia is Health Manager, Occupational Health, Shell, Nigeria. Hi, Doc. Welcome to Canvas.
Thank you for having me, Dayo, and it's good to be back here.
Absolutely. I'm looking forward to this conversation because I think it's better now. We're having a lot more conversations and discussions and expressions such as, or terms such as mental health is more, you find it's more common in conversations, but maybe not too long ago, it wasn't the case. Why is it that we're able to have conversations more easily and more readily about mental health now compared to what the situation was not too long before now?
I just think that the world order is changing. So as with everything, frankly, there's a shift as generations sort of morph from one to the other. So from baby boomers all the way it goes to Gen X's, Gen Z's, to millennials and all of that, it will continue to morph. Our fathers then do what you got to do and get on with it. And get a picture and get out of it. No noise. That was a mindset of a generation, and what that meant and I think anybody would be kidding themselves to think that they had it better than us in terms of how the struggles of the world. Things were tougher, whether you like it or not, whether you aim it or not. But they expressed mental health less. And I dare say they felt it less. And later on, I can explain what that means, actually.
Can you explain it now?
Now, all right, I'll put it this way. If you focus on a problem, if a problem is prevalent, people talk about something a bit much. It's almost like alternative truth, classic Donald Trump. If you say a lie long enough, people can then believe that it's actually truth. I'm not saying mental health is a lie, but the more you give or actually become aware of it, the more it can become the thing. There are two reasons for the explosion of mental health discussions and mental health issues today, globally. We talk about fast-paced, and to add to fast-paced is how much cerebration is required at work. So because mental health is that space that deals with cognitive, so intellectual interaction with you and back and forth, and then extension of that is emotion and psychological and social and all of that, in that whole bouquet for mental health, as it's defined, then the more I need that to work, the more my work is that sort of work, the more that's probably able to sort of impact me. So not just my work, but my life. Life is generally a lot more, it's faster, too much information, inundation, aware of too much and all of that. As against what would have been a bit shielded, all my focus is I go to the factory, I do this, turn this wheel, move this lever, produce this, come back, feed my kids, give my wife sleep because I'm burnt out. I mean, physically, manually exhausted. Wake up the next morning, back to the grind. And I have been acculturized from birth. You have to do the grind to get the prize. So you pay the price, you get the prize. And there was no excuse. So there wasn't even room to express. Right? So the more you shift from did that guy have issues to express? Maybe not even being aware of it is, ignorance is bliss. There is that fact. So we probably were, the stick was taken to you as a kid and myself, both of us, when we grew up, and that was that was par for the course. Your mom smacks you, man. You went out of line. There wasn't need to be a conversation. It was a good hard smack with your dad or your mom or both, and you got on with it and became better for it. If you look back the way we sort of our mindsets were. Yeah. Today, probably none of us smacks our kids. We kind of think, don't do that. You can mess them up mentally and all of that. The genes haven't changed. They are still human beings, Homo sapiens, probably 20, 30 years apart. Why is it all so much of an anathema today and all that? I'm talking about how the thinking changes the experience. Yeah. And if I did smack my child today, I might begin to worry about, is he going to adjust properly? Am I hurting him mentally for the medium to long term? That kind of a thing where our parents didn't be dumb about that and we turned out okay.
I'd like to reference the topic once again. For the next question, mental health and secure on the bag. Now, there's some context to this. Secure on the bag, of course, implies, in this context, achieving goals, work goals, but also
life goals.
Life goals and your financial goals as well. So we're going to be using expressions interchangeably in the course of our conversation. Because at the end of the day, while you want to deliver at work, you also want to be able to provide for yourself and your family. And that's talking finances here. So does financial stress impact mental well-being?
Without a doubt. And I say without a doubt, I mean, it's a no-brainer. But let me tell you why it's a no-brainer. It's because of how we regard finances and material possessions in our climb. Again, I always reference into different phases of the existence of the world. In communist Russia, where earnings were not tied to, so I don't work and earn X amount of money necessarily because that's the worth of my work. It was that all the resource was communal in principle, right? You didn't think about what's my take care of my family, because that was everything, the basic needs were provided by state, right? So it de-emphasized financial, acquisition, possessions, material, and all of that. But they did, in many contexts, as great work as America for a time. For a time. Their outputs were pretty much to some degree comparable to some extent. I'm trying to say that society shapes our expectations, shapes our norms. In today's world, as you are, enlightened, educated, in town, go back to a family meeting in the village and all of that, they're waiting for you. The seats they give you depends on how much you've contributed before and after and how they expect to get from you. I'm not saying, and this is just the truth of the matter. So it's become the almost, the biggest single, if you like, icon by which you are judged. Your success is judged. In fact, your position doesn't matter, frankly. Where you work doesn't even matter as much as how much you bring to the communal setting and how much you can pass around. And that is also sad. But in a sense, it puts extraordinary pressure on us in our generation, in our society, in our climb. And that's something to think about. So when you say financial affects everything, it affects not just work, everything else. And work is the means, in general terms, to securing that financial thing. So that's the connect. And that's why it's such a big lever to make that work or not work.
What are some common mental health challenges people face when pursuing financial and other work goals?
The biggest one is anxiety. And anxiety, which basically stems from, is a lack of coping. So this is either I expect to do this, or this is expected of me, and I'm very worried I can't meet it or haven't met it and all of that in its simplest form. Sometimes it's not logical. In fact, when it gets into a mental health illness state, it becomes illogical. The connect between what you've done and what's expected of you in your head is illogical. However, that's usually where that comes from. So anxiety is the number one. With them on the back of which you have depression. And then you can go on to have psychosis, and then from there, all the other things, schizophrenia and all of them can fall on the back of that. But that's the spectrum, if you like. And it's a real big bummer, because actually, beyond a particular threshold, it actually prevents you from achieving that which you can achieve logically. And that's why it's such a, it's almost a tragic comedy, if you like. So the biggest one with financial pressures with regards to work or with life or society, and I'm clear now in my head that it's not just, it affects everything. And that's how we're wired in today's society for the vast majority of the world. That it is that, and that brings on the anxiety. So that's what it is, because it's always a means to that end.
And anxiety or whatever other mental health challenge in the workplace, does that smack of a lack of capacity? If you're concerned about what the goals are and your ability to perform or even exceed those goals, does it speak to your capacity as a person?
So when you speak about capacity, I'd like to sort of stretch it a little bit more. So it doesn't speak to your competence. It's not based on your competence. I would like to say it's not particularly just about capacity. It's really more about how you cope with the expectations. And I'm deliberately replacing the pressures with expectations. Right? Because if it's expectations, then this is what I expect, either self-driven, but from within myself, or my organization, or even society has put on as an expectation from me, or my perceived expectations. And that's the problem. So when you say that that's a capacity matter, very often, if you just calm down or you have a really good support system, you find that actually you may have the capacity, but still suffer serious anxiety because you haven't balanced how you cope with the different expectations per time and the way the work is and the culture and everything else around the workplace that may be militating against you, so to speak. So it's not as simple as to say capacity is in what context? Certainly not in the professional sense, because you hire right and get the right people and all of that, you've got the competence, right? That's a competence level. As a person, character-wise and all of that, typically, you've been through this, you've been trained for this, I don't think that typically the expectation is above the individual. So I'm not sure capacity is exactly how I want to couch it. I think it's how the entire system enables you, allow your capacity, deliver the outcome. And at times, things can negate that capacity. And capacity changes from time to time and in different contexts. So not a straightforward capacity being the problem, but that we actually have to enhance true capacity per time, dynamic capacity, to be able to do those things which expect to be done. That's how I see it.
What strategies can a person employ to deal with mental health challenges when it comes to dealing with the pressures of succeeding in the workplace?
I'm going to try and not get to the theoretical things about all of that now. Number one thing I find that can change that whole thing is meaning.
Meaning?
Absolutely, meaning. If you are wired, your system or your organization and your context or your world around you, if you like, is wired to always go back to give you a why, in which case a purpose, I find that it can help you run through everything else. If you sat on a table, you are here delivering this huge means of sort of communicating, engaging, reaching out to people in Niger-Delta. This is what you're doing as part of your day job. But what you see it as is that there's a huge problem in this region. And part of it is information, communication, and engagement that can have a huge problem. And you are determined that that engagement is the reason you literally exist. And it's just by happenstance that you get paid a buck to help make it happen. You reach beyond what your job description prescribes. So if you're sat here in this studio till midnight, night on night, to deliver what you consider a fantastic series of programs and all of that, you feel like physically exhausted, but mentally stimulated. And it changes what work means to you. I'm not saying you should be here midnight every night perpetually. I'm just saying that I find that where the real equation balances out is in finding meaning and purpose, rather than just that cut and dried, this and that and that and that and that and that. So if you find that, if you can find a why for the vast majority of your folks, it helps as a first, if you like, line of defense. When you found a why, then make a way to give them the best enablement for their capacities to deliver the outcome, which is where you take away psychological toxicity from the workplace. You make sure it's psychologically safe. People can feel comfortable. People form the right kind of bonds in the workplace to fight together this world is not a nice place. The world is not nice. We have to make it workable, livable, enhance the best parts of it to help us go to the rough parts of it. And it's a journey best traveled together, a group of people, than absolutely alone.
Is there some enabling? And I use the word enabling here in a negative sense going on. And I like to reference what you said at the start of this conversation. You know, when I was a kid, when you were younger, you got smacked. Just get on with it. Get it done.
Absolutely.
I mean, nobody asked you how you were feeling about it. No, just deliver. And we got better for it, as you said. But now we're talking about anxiety. We're talking about, you know, really... Are we weaker? Are we getting soft? Are we?
I can be controversial here, right?
Absolutely.
Absolutely, we're softer. And there is significant enablement. Significant enablement. So people whip up this card, and I am a total consummate health professional, an occupational mental health professional. So I know that there's a serious problem here. But I also know that just like when you're changing anything, you know, you remember when things were so bad safety-wise in the industry, you know, in the 70s and the 80s, a lot of accidents, people got killed and everything. And they were like, we can't continue like this. And therefore, how much safety was high-graded, almost above commercial interests, literally above commercial interests. And then, therefore, safety became the whipping card. And it enabled people to do things that were unthinkable just a few years before, negating commercial outcomes for perceived safety outcomes. Did it get safer? Yes, it did. But it meant you had to accept all that muck. So you couldn't veto a safety barrier, for example, which you felt, come on, be realistic. This is not a real problem. We've got stuff to do, but this is not the problem and all that. You couldn't do that. It became politically not right. So there's a component of change, of a paradigm shift that has to have enablement for it to penetrate. So yes, there's a lot of enablement. Hire a Gen Z, for example. And it says, if I can't come into the workplace every day, or you're threatening my mental health. I don't feel right now I feel harassed. But you say, where's the thing I asked you to do yesterday? Where's the thing? The standard things we always knew as the interaction between, you know, boss and subordinate. Like, this is a task, it's a bit different, you haven't done it. What's going, you know, and all of that. You probably couldn't say the things that were said to you, you know, in the workplace 10 years ago today, especially to people of a particular generation. So is there enablement? It's working a tightrope to call it enablement. Because is it real? It's asking the question, is it real or not? Your reality you create by what your information source and your information load and your information sort of threshold is. So that's what it is.
Whilst researching, preparing for this conversation, we came across certain expressions such as mindfulness practices. I imagine that means something to you. Not a lot to me, I confess. But how does it how does it help in managing stress related to financial and work goals?
So it's again coming back to that point, is that what is really important to me. You know, I had a friend of mine, colleague of mine, who relocated abroad and done some good work abroad, gotten a good level abroad for 15, 20 years. So it's really gotten a good level. Gets into his 50s because he was my senior. And there's the itch that happens to professionals when you're abroad for a long time. After a while, because somehow when you go out abroad, sometimes you can still be very peripheral. You may be able to do the work as a professional, top professional, but you are in society peripheral. And it's a gregarious, very extroverted guy who, like, you know, I come back where I want to feel my roots and everything and all that. So that itches and all that. And he says, you know what, I can't come back to Nigeria without 500, if I don't have 500 million. Set up my practice and be, you know, sort of insulated from all of that. That's his perceived reality. He didn't have 500 million, maybe half that, and it puts him under pressure. So Daniel, if you gave me 100 million, I could actually retire, you know. I'm just saying, you know, my point is that, so we all set these things for ourselves. So, to go back to the original question, is everybody sets this. With mindfulness, you come to tell yourself what's really important. And with mindfulness, you say, all right, if I feel stressed or anxious today, I go back and try and tear it out. Almost, I counsel to write down why you are. What are you? Because anxiety is tied to a lot about fear. What are you afraid of? Right? And then can you actually itemize that fear? When talks of, being let off work and all that for the vast majority of people in the organization came up, I used to say, ask yourself what your biggest fear is. What's giving you the anxiety? Just having heard the information. You are reasonably well paid in your job, and you sit down and say, all right, I want to be able to pay my children's school fees for the foreseeable. So you take on maybe say, let's say for the next 2 years, 3 years, each time you'd have found whatever the next thing is and all of that. How much are the school fees today? Put a factor for inflation and put on a spreadsheet. Multiply by the number of terms that will be in that 2-year period, maybe 6 terms and all that. Get a figure. I want to feed my family. What's our run rate currently? Put a marker for inflation. Put that for 2 years. Get a figure. What are my other needs? If I'm living in somebody else's house, what's my rent? Get a figure. And every figure you get, right, do I have that saved up, available in either assets, cash, whatever it is? And then interrogate the problem like that. But then also tell yourself, do I need that? For example, if I am thinking about the current Nigeria, do I need to go on 2 vacations a year with my family? And where do we go? If we used to go to Hawaii in the past or go to somewhere in the Caribbean and all that, can we go to Ibom Resort or so? What I mean is, it's about time with the family rather than exactly where we go. It's nice to come back from the holiday and tell everybody else, we just came from the Dominican Republic and all that. And then your children and the school say, we went to Hawaii. That's all good. It gives you that peck and all that. But is that really important to you? So mindfulness enables you to interact very carefully with, first of all, your internal self and how you are with others. And it is almost the quid pro quo is seek meaning. Seek meaning.
Meaning. Let's go back to that.
Yeah.
Who determines meaning? Is it the workplace? Is it the boss? Is it the organization? Is it the individual? Who determines what meaning is?
You must, as an individual, first determine your meaning and then see how it fits into the why of either your workplace, society, or whatever it is. And be bold enough to say, if my meaning doesn't fit with this, maybe this is not for me. Look at Stoics, for example, or folks who deliberately don't think about material things or don't elevate to that kind of level. And they're probably happier than you and I. They don't have to wear a Gucci pair of shoes, or they don't need that, to show that they've arrived and all of that. They don't have to drive a, $100,000 SUV to feel that they've arrived, because that's part of the pressure we put on ourselves. It tells us, like, can I go from point A to point B with my Jetta or whatever it is? Right? If it runs well, good engine and all that. So it's that where do you meter that? So that's part of what mindfulness should do for you. And then you go to your organization. What is it asking you to do? What's the true goal in the organization? If I'm in this context and all that, can I deliver what is being expected of me? And very often, I don't think they go ahead of what you can't find your meaning in that. And I'm not saying it's bad to be ambitious. I'm just saying, who are you in that context? There are people who say, you know what, I don't want the highest job in this place, because I don't want that. In Nigeria, we want it because we want to be able to pay our bills and probably more money and more and all that. Unfortunately, we are wired to the fact that, frankly, if you haven't earned that much, almost like the American kind of mindset, then you're almost not worth, or your success is determined by that height. But is that what true success actually means? So that's the thing. So what is we have needs, right? If you're familiar with Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which you may or may not believe in, there are basic things at the lower sort of. Can I cover those? And if you strip it down to its bare parts, you may find that, give or take, I can cover those. But what then? Everything else is a choice. Everything else is a choice. How much yanga all that you make is a choice. What is truly important to you? Is it more important that I have genuine, true friends who I can say ride or die, who would, if they don't see me for 3 days, hear from me for 3 days, they're saying, where are you? What's going on? Not because you're the one that buys all the drinks, if you guys are the guys that hang the drink, but because they're saying, generally, are you okay? And if they sense that you were not, they would rip up trees and pretty much stop whatever they're doing to make sure that you are okay. If you've got a small coterie of friends of that nature, you're a richer man than maybe, I don't know, the richest man in Africa.
It is Canvas, the Niger-Delta Roundtable, in commemoration of World Mental Health Day. We're discussing on this episode mental health and securing the bag. My guest is a mental health expert, Dr. Sikak Intia. We'll go for a break. We'll return. Conversation will continue. Please stay with us.
Our yellow and black markers indicate pipeline and flow line right-of-way boundaries. Your activity could impact on the buried high-pressure hydrocarbon pipelines and flow lines, leading to possible leaks and explosion. Please keep off. Do not engage in sand mining or any form of excavation, pipeline vandalism, oil theft, and bush burning within pipeline and flow line right-of-way. Do not farm, trade, or locate any business on pipeline and flow line right-of-way. It is against the law to apportion land, sell, or build on pipeline and flow line right-of-way. Maintain a setback distance of at least 30 meters or about 100 feet from the right-of-way boundaries always. We care for your safety and that of the environment.
This message is brought to you by the Shell Petroleum Development Company of Nigeria Limited, SPDC, operator of the Nigerian National Petroleum Company, NNPC Limited, Total Energies, and Ajib Joint Venture.
Welcome back, and thanks for staying tuned. It is Canvas in Niger-Delta Roundtable brought to you by SPDC in commemoration of World Mental Health Day. On this episode, we are discussing mental health and securing the bag. My guest, once again, Dr. Sikak Intia. Doc, welcome again.
Thank you.
Mental health professionals like yourself must do something.
Yeah.
What roles do you play in helping individuals navigate financial and work stress?
I think that we play three huge roles. Then I'll tell you about why I don't think they are so huge anymore. The first of them is that help society recognize this problem. And I'm going to back that up a little bit with a few stats just very shortly. The second one of them is to provide a veritable sort of funnel. So those that fall off the wagon get help. The right kind of help. The third is to continue to shape policy, guide society in terms of how best do we sort of sit this. And this is multidisciplinary, so it goes beyond just mental health professionals and all that. But let me come back to that. So we're very important. But the true mental health professional should be needed in the extreme rarity. It's the same way I say that a consultant gynecologist or obstetrician, which is people that deliver women, our women, should be needed only in about 2% of deliveries. Because the way God designed childbirth, you should be able to give birth in a farm. Once you can cut the cord, and in the good old days, women were able to go tie it and just tell us, give me a knife and all that, and then deal with the problems afterwards. What I'm saying is that the natural process should be able to work the majority of the time. And the way God designed us, everything has a fail-safe. Every system has a reaction. That's how it grows and develops and all of that. We've tampered with a number of our fail-safes, sadly, and that's probably where we are. My point is that the mental health professional, in terms of intervention, should be the rarity. The vast majority of intervention goes beyond mental health professional. But you can help shape, you can help signpost, which is I talked about that, a huge part about guiding, shaping society and all of that. I mentioned the fact about if you had a coterie of friends who were really safe space and all that, you're probably going to be the best. That's probably your best prescription for mental health. A place to continue early on, before it becomes anything, exchange ideas, talk about it, get support, and support doesn't have to be material. Just, okay, yeah. Oh, are you feeling this as well? Conversations. If you're familiar with the blue zones, it's a phenomenon, where the oldest people in the world live. All 4 or 5 of them in the world, the only thing they have in common is not exercise, it's not good food and all of that. The only thing they have in common is the strongest possible societal bonds in small, almost like how cells in church form. So some by age group and all of that. But you find that they're very clannish, very together. No one does anything entirely alone. and it's safe spaces, right? So that's the biggest single prescription for mental health, way beyond the medication, maybe and all that. Medication is for acute and all of that. Yeah, we can get involved, and if you kind of jump off a lever, we bring you back down and all that. But for sustainable mental health, probably mental well-being, you need that's your medication. Then everything else adds on. Now, if you come back to what we as mental health professionals do, is to help shape. I say our job is better to help shape rather than to treat. The treating guy is the last line and should be needed in the rarity. In Nigeria, for example, if you want to take a guess at the ratio of population to psychiatrists, it's probably one of the worst in the world. So worst in the world because we have a burgeoning population of near 200 million, and we probably have got nigh on something like a few hundred practicing psychiatrists in Nigeria. So that's how bad it is. So you pray not to need that. Sadly, I'll talk about the looming war in mental health very shortly, if you give me a moment, after that one that's coming, that's going to hit us now. But that's what it is. You know how many facilities in Nigeria actually are set up for psychiatric service? Public, at least, service and all of that. You've probably got just over one per state. How does that work? So if I needed someone who had a psychiatric emergency today, to be honest, it's a bit tough to get that. In Port Harcourt, this facility that used to be empty because the knowledge, the systems and all of that weren't there in society, you can't get a bed in a psychiatric hospital in Port Harcourt right now. You probably don't know the Commissioner for Health or the governor. It's perpetually full. People are on the ground.
Are we at the looming war now?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And the biggest game changer for that war is what's happening to our young. We watch movies, see how junkies are in America, all the way from smoking glue, pills to that. We used to make tramadol into a joke in Nigeria, Ide Jones, they do all kind of thing and all of that. It's come back for us. The drug epidemic in Nigeria afflicting our young has reached the point where we are not even as aware of it as we should be. But if you go to the rainbow, that's what's there. And remember, only 3 to 4% of our people even have access to that kind of care. The rest work it out one way or the other. And please don't let's go into how they work it out and what the outcomes are. So it's a looming crisis. In 2025, by 2025, 1/3 of your workforce, the workforce we're talking about here, would be that age group. 1/3 of the workforce. They are not a different society from the rest of their age mates and all of that. What that means is that it's crept into your workplace. You just may not be fully aware of it. And it affects them in a different way.
Earlier on, you used an expression, you said those who fall off the wagon.
Absolutely.
Why should if you're having issues, talk to a professional, get friends, deal with family, I don't know. But should the workplace be concerned about those who fall off the wagon?
Absolutely. Because we're falling off the wagon in far higher numbers than we used to. And not just for young, across the whole chain. Should be concerned. And what should your concern be? What we do is structure across board. The first one is in the macro society. How is that set up? You're in Nigeria. We're in Niger-Delta today. We've come to a point where, you're looking out and someone's coming to Port Harcourt and you're thinking about all of the challenges, security, kidnapping, stuff and all of that. You don't have to be kidnapped to think about the trauma it puts on your mind. The fact that I want to go somewhere and I'm thinking twice about, can I go there? It's already somewhere playing there in my head. Whether it is true or not. When my friends say, do you guys go out at night to Port Harcourt? I said, of course. They said, how can you go out at night to Port Harcourt? But that's the noising. And there are a good number of people who are here who would never go out at night. But the fact that you cannot be you cannot leave. What I mean is, if I want to go out, I should be able to go out. By the time I go out, I should be worried that I should get and all that. But Nigeria is coming to a place where we almost everywhere in every region, there's something that makes you think about, is this okay? I come back to the issue. So falling off the wagon, so it starts from all those pressures. Those are stressors. Then you come even nearer. The financial pressure, whether you're taking T-Pain or whatever, it's a real thing. No matter how rich you are, your running costs has pretty much doubled or tripled in the past year and a half. I'm saying that in 18 months, your running costs has pretty much doubled or tripled. And then you go further from that. the assaults to your daily normal sense of well-being are myriad. It's crazy. So what we then have to make sure we have is, in all of this chaos, can we center enough to just say, it's tough, it's bad, but I have this sort of safe haven, that my mind is also in that safe haven. You may have to make adjustments. And that's what I talk about, a small coterie of really like-minded, sane, strong people. Because they say, what are you doing about it? And then everybody says, you know what, this is the best thing to do. And then when you go on from that, if you move it to the workplace, you ask yourself, in this context of what we're delivering, I used to, before I joined this organization, I used to consult for banks. And I remember that when I listened to how middle-level managers in banks and people in banks and all that talk, how they express the toxicity, things like QBR, which constantly business reviews, used to be like, this is where it's a guillotine, essentially. And then I'm looking at that, I'm like, I just left, an oil company at the time, where I was country manager, and the company left Nigeria, so I was back in the street, I was consulting. And I'm like, how is this allowed to be how the work is done? Where you literally, a gun is taken to your head if you're anything short of some really ridiculous target in context.
Thank you. That's where we're going to now, targets. Mm-hmm. What is the nexus between, or is there a nexus between realistic work goals and mental health? And what constitutes realistic work goals? Mm-hmm. What is that even?
So that's the thing. So I'll talk about realistic work goals and what the intent of goals are in an organization. So you have realistic work goals means that given the resource, given the market, given the climate, given the culture, given all of these things, it is expected that I should be able to attain X. And then they put a bit of a margin on X to get to a Y, which is the goals that are set. Because the goals are deliberately supposed to stretch you just that bit within reason. But more important than just the goals being a stretch one, it should be that in the event that any of these factors shift out of control, or our control, if you like, that you don't die by that goal, right? It probably isn't necessarily going to be said to you, because that would mean like, oh, you know what, if I don't get it, no, but that the way it's handled doesn't become catastrophic automatically. Except you're negligent or you sabotage the system, then it shouldn't be catastrophic automatically. So you come back to the point is that how do we then set those goals? That's what it is about. And then the most important factor about setting those goals in a healthy place is that you have to co-create those goals. Agree to them. Where you have absolutely no input, no control, how much more semi-autonomy over your goal setting and all of that, then that is not healthy. It is toxic. It is toxic.
How can family and friends provide support for a person who is struggling with work goals and securing their financial future?
So very often, I'm not even necessarily saying that you must tie them both together. Work at all is a means to securing financial future. You have a job, you get paid for it, right? If you attain the work goals, that's about then differentiation. Bonuses, margin, promotion, all that, how you get along. Or staying in the job, I get that. But the key thing about it is that when you say, this is the job I want to do, again, I come back to that point about seeking meaning. If you continue to see the job as purely a paycheck, which means this is how I pay my bills and all of that, you might then see a point where there might be a disconnect and you're likely to fall off that wagon, if you like. There's something that the New Hampshire, Institute does, which is talk about the whole circle of well-being. So it is not just the work one or the financial one, because they even separate both. It is that every area you have significant input so that you are balanced. If you are balanced, frankly, a balanced man is a man that walks away from a job. You know what? This is too much. I can't deal with this. I can do something else. And you find that they may be able to find something else that pays better or gives them more fulfillment if they walk away from that one which I am wedded to just because of the paycheck. I had a guy who I used to counsel with in those days in the bank and all of that, who would come, and when he was telling me his own personal story, because he asked to see me specifically after we had finished the sessions and all of that, and I was talking with him and all of that, and basically broke down in tears. This is a man who's older than I am. And I was talking about just the kind of name calling. absolutely in public, public by your peers, everybody's there. It's, how you're treated, like the kind of things they're made to do and all of that. For the females, there's almost sexualization of that performance. For the males, it's literally slavery. And I asked him, why are you still here? And it's like, I gotta feed the kids, I gotta pay bills and all of that and all that. And I'm like, you spent nearly 15 years in the banking industry. I dare say you may not know what you actually carry or possess in terms of skill sets to do something else out of here. When he eventually left and decided doing his own thing, he's far more successful than he could ever have been in that organization. So my point is that, what's my meaning? What's my meaning? There are people who will say, you know what? I don't take this job because I want to be able to see my kids a bit more. I want to be there in the formative years of their life. So I won't take a job that takes me out of country or out of time or out of sight of them for long periods of the time. Your meaning has trumped what is in front of you as the bag. And I dare say you may not make as much as that bag might have given you, but you're a richer man because you're nearer. Your mindfulness has led you to a more complete, better balanced sense of well-being across board. Remember, that financial well-being is not in the figure. Never in the figure. Beyond a base level, it's no longer the figure. If you've got enough to handle where I live, what I eat, the clothes on my back, stuff for family, those basic, there's needs and then low-level wants. I've got all that put together, everything. The figure becomes I would like to say greed before even ambition. The margin, look at the kind of, what the kind of monies you're hearing that are being stolen in Nigeria, for example. Mm. There are some that it isn't, if you squandered $1 million a day on yourself, you wouldn't exhaust the money by your third generation after you. Why would you steal that much money just because you can? There's almost the paranoia with which you got. So I'm saying that the financial figure, there isn't a figure that guarantees you well-being. And by the way, I hope you realize that richer people are more prone to depression than poorer people. Just so you know. That's the paradox. But we get caught up in the figures. I want to be a millionaire by the time I'm 30. Oh, and in the next generation be coming after us, how many likes I get, who has viewed my content. Pretty soon here talking about content creator and all of that. Everyone is a content creator and all of that. And for no real, when I say content creator, they just post anything they like. No, that doesn't really help or add any value to anybody. But people follow it.
Organizations, what roles do they play in ensuring the mental well-being of workers?
Set enabling environment. First of all, how you organize the work. Hire right, resource right, so there isn't continuing pressure or burden on people working in the organization. Organize correctly, but most importantly, organize in a way that allows healthy conversations in the workplace. The aim, this journey to making a workplace psychologically safe is the most important intervention an organization itself can make, because that leads to organizational health. And then when you go beyond that, I always say, having done all these nice structural things, make sure your people get the why so they can find their meaning. And if that becomes the culture that you have in your workplace, you find that automatically you get discretionary performance without flogging the horse too much. It's been my personal experience that when I have led teams and I have been able to say, hey guys, we push hard, we play hard, we fail safely, and we kind of say, that might not have been the best thing to do in that particular moment. All right, what did we do wrong? That, and that, we'll fix it. We go forward. We get on with it. The next time round, the guys are batting average. And if you happen to be privileged, because it's a privilege to lead any team, be very careful how you transmit the pressures of them from top to bottom. I always say, don't pass the poop. So if you get pooped on, make sure you get a very large soak away at your level and hold all the poop and breathe and process and say, all right, what do my people really need to hear right now?
for people looking to improve or work on their mental health and get some financial literacy and all of that as well, what resources are available for them?
So there's a lot of organizations deal with this differently. In organizations such as ours, for example, there's a lot of material out, there's a lot of intentionality, there's a lot of conversations that are going on and all of that. There's something we call a counseling service, like an employee assistance program. It's a 24/7 anonymous helpline you can call to talk about anything in the world, work or non-work, but it's provided by the workplace. So you can have conversations that allow them guide you more specifically to solutions and interventions for yourself. There's material all over, again, if you have a robust health department, they'll provide materials you can go on and read as you need. You can seek help by coming into and saying, I want to talk to someone. And you absolutely will have that provided for you within the shortest possible time. That's all there. But I find that these things are also enabling. They help you get centered and all of that. But more importantly, the workplaces should be set up so that people can share. And share without being afraid of being shamed. The more we are able to share without stigma and without being shamed, the far more successful will be the general society and culture that's built in the workplace. Remember, the definition of mental health by WHO is being able to, one, thrive at work and then in society. So you have to frankly thrive at work to be mentally okay. That's how important it is. That fact is probably lost to a huge, on us as a country. And I'm hoping that more organizations take it more personal and don't just pay lip service and can do things to structurally organize their workplaces better.
Is it wrong to be focused on, earlier we talked about working just for the paycheck because you need to pay bills and the bills are there. Is that such a terrible thing to be overly concerned about the paycheck and being able to pay the bills?
My point around this, I would typically say, it's not a terrible thing, but you're likely to fail earlier than someone who finds a bit more in his job than just the paycheck. So I hire many from time to time, and one of the things when I'm hiring are the ad hoc persons who've come from. So I look for someone who's come from maybe a teaching hospital or something like that, who's come to say, I want to work in your department, in your organization. And I'm like, why are you leaving that? That looks like, that I was talking to a theater nurse once, a really senior theater nurse who's been fantastic work in a government hospital, and then comes to say, I want to work in occupational health in your organization. And I'm like, occupational health or in my organization? And I says, you know what I'm talking about. And I said, all right, so what's the driver? It's interesting. What's the driver? And I said, okay, how much are you earning? And she names the figure. And I said, do you know what the entry level pay here is? And she says, she's heard. So she names the figure. And I said, okay, so is it this margin that's your driver to leave that, which I consider a more specialized role, to come to this one, which I consider at entry level, at your age? And I said, the reason I'm not going to hire you, I'm sorry, right now, is that I think your motivation is not right. And I think that after a while, once you get used to the money, because trust me, in 3, 4, 5, 6 months and all that, you get used to the money. And then it doesn't mean as much. It just becomes a golden handcuff. And then I struggle that you may have problems with motivation down the line. And as a principal, I thought that wasn't right. And she thought I was maybe a bit mean, but I was straight up and I thought that was right. And I asked her, please, what you can do, go back to that organization. Ask yourself what else you can do in this your particular specialty and where else you can give that service that can give you the earnings, Because sometimes we're closed. We think, okay, this job I have, I want to work till I'm pensionable and all of that. In today's world, nobody thinks about working to pension anymore. The pensions, if it's held in Naira, if you have and all that, it's absolutely almost going to be meaningless. If you consider this current trend, if you have 200 million in your pension fund, it may be equivalent to 20 million today. By the time you need it, 10 years down the line. So really, the pensions in Nigeria are still a very big pinch of salt because they don't grow the way inflation grows, even though they invest your money. So I'm just very worried about how we get to be, in the years coming in front of us and all that, which is why it's quite a dire situation for us.
What advice would you give to a person, or anyone, about balancing mental health and financial aspirations?
I think that it's important that you have clear. What happens most is people don't have clear financial goals. And I raise my hand that I don't think that when I've ever interrogated myself, I've automatically found that, oh, you know what, it's very clear to me. What I have done is look at what are my base needs, my kids, to the point where they're still dependent and all of that, how I sort that out, my needs, where I live and all of that, where I do the things I do, and then I put in my biggest ones, which is golf. Can I take care of my golfing needs, sort of, because I got to have balance and all that. And then I said to myself, figure-wise, is that my aspiration? Second thing is that I want to be able to still live in this particular neighborhood that I live in and all that. My kids go to this sort of school or grow up in this kind of neighborhood. I am able to do X, Y, and Z, and then be valuable to my society at this kind of level continuously. What does that take? And then avoid the desperation that grab anything that's moving by your side, irrespective. Like I said, the security is not necessarily in the figure. Once you pass the threshold for what your needs and your, lower level wants are, then you're already on somewhere and all that. For example, if you're the kind of guy that has, 3-4 side chicks or girlfriends and all that, that can't go into that figure. So you have to ask yourself, can I continue that lifestyle? Especially if it is threatened or I don't see a continuous source. So you can't do boom and bust with your lifestyle and your financial sort of, things and all that. When you're in season, my God, you're everywhere and all of that. It's 3 champagne bottles every time you go out at night and all of that. And then you disappear because you can't do that anymore. You can't even come out. That's not life. That's not financial problems. You don't have financial problems because you haven't right-sized. Your real problems are not in the amount of money you've earned or not earned and all that. Now, that's another level entirely. That's probably strategy. Come back to the base guy. Value systems in Nigeria are out of whack. Why were our grandfathers more successful at balancing their financial aspirations? I'm in the village, I can feed my family, my wife might go to the farm, I go to the bigger farm, whatever it is and all that. But generally speaking, we work within the context of all of that. Can our ambitions stay where they are more realistic? Can our financial aspirations be a bit more realistic and not necessarily be in the figure, but what enables you live a more balanced life? Can you find meaning and therefore find what resources your meaning more than just how much is in your bank balance? Can you make sure you get away from peer pressure? So your friend bought a house somewhere, you feel that if you haven't bought that house, you haven't arrived. That's ridiculous. That's ridiculous. Or I haven't built a mansion in the village, as it used to be for a time, for some of us coming from that old generation mindset. And who's in the house in the village? You go there maybe once a year. Or your funeral of your parents happens and you have to build this ridiculous mansion that you may never go back to occupy after the funeral. Things like that. You have to right-size what your true resources to resource your meaning truly is. And that's your first step. And I always say that it is not in the figure. It's never really truly in the figure. And I'm hoping that helps somebody out there today.
I'm certain that it has. And on that note, we wrap up this episode of Canvas, the Niger-Delta Roundtable. We have discussed mental health and securing the bag. My guest, mental health expert and advocate, Dr. Nsika Kintia. Doc, it's been fascinating really having this conversation with you.
Absolutely.
Thank you for your time.
What can I say?
I'm Adidai Ilishak, and thank you once again for watching this episode. Catch more episodes on our social media platforms and YouTube. And remember, mental health, balance it, very important. Seek meaning, as Doc said. Bye for now.